I'm a prototyper and a prototyper all my life so far, and I'm really excited about the camera API. But I think it's not kind of a game changer, and you really have to know why you need it. I was sitting around in the arcade, and then I had this ball in front of me, and I thought like, hey, back in the days, we had this idea with this ball. You have to try it with these glasses, and then it works really well.
And that was Christoph Springer. Christoph is an XR veteran. He works as an XR developer at Axel Springer and is now one of the minds behind Laser Limbo, a successful mixed reality game on Quest that turned into a full AR arcade in Berlin. Over the past year, he has worked on several projects and full games that merge physical and digital and push the boundaries of what the current generation of headset is capable of. His recent research has been focused on the camera API, leading to some of the craziest and most polished prototype I have seen, giving us a glimpse of the future of human-computer interaction. Today, we will dive into the camera API and understand what its current biggest limitation.
So you can make marker detection, or you can make image detection, or whatever. But the problem is that this is...
What are some of the creative uses you might have not thought about?
In the end, see really well that something is virtual and something is not because of the light, because of the noise in the camera feed. So I think a good approach would be
how he implemented ball tracking in the working prototype I personally tested.
I actually do a prototype with the ball tracking. And for the ball tracking, in the end, you use the best frame or the next frame you have, and then you try to track it. And this is working really well. I just using, in the end, some blob tracking. And
an important question you should ask yourself before even starting.
I think the thing is, the question shouldn't be like, what can be tracked? I think more like, what is efficient track, because you can track a lot of stuff.
And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Kristoff under the spotlight. Kristoff, it's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It sounds really, really nice if you say this about me, because actually, yeah, I'm a prototyper and a prototyper all my life so far, and I'm really excited about the camera API, and for me it was just a no-brainer to do stuff with this. And yeah, I'm really happy that guys like you saw this and thought like, oh wow, this is good. And yeah, this makes me really proud.
I love prototypes in general, because that is, whenever people share them, that's even better, because usually these prototypes always are kept behind closed doors. So it's great to have you here, especially at this very moment when there are a lot of people excited about the pass-through camera API that people have been waiting for let's say, for a long time, let's say, now is out. Let me ask you, first of all, what is it? And was it worth the wait?
Depends on what you want to do. Actually, I think what I realized since they released the camera API is that Meta already did a really, really great job. For all their building blocks and everything that already kind of using the camera, they're doing it really, really, really well. So I think the camera API is more for people that want to make more experimental stuff. For this, it's really, really great, because you don't have to rely on some specific API call or some specific function. You can just use the camera feed as it is. But I think it's not kind of a game changer in the way that now every game will use it and every company will use it. I think you have to find some special cases where it makes sense to use it. And I'm really excited about this, because I like to experiment a lot with new technologies and actually to find out what is kind of the limitations of this technology. And with the camera API, we now have kind of flexible access. I will come to this later a bit more, because it's kind of tricky still. But at least it gives you the camera feed as it is. And this is kind of really, really good for a starting point.
So maybe in simple terms, what can you currently do and what is that you cannot do?
depends on what you are using. So actually, if you use the Meta SDK and the new samples they have, then you have to use the web texture, and it's kind of a normal thing in Unity. You can use this, and in the end, you can also perform on this everything you want. So you can make marker detection, or you can make image detection, or whatever. But the problem is that this is kind of 20 to 80 milliseconds delayed. So this is cool for some basic tracking stuff, but if you want to go more advanced, then you have to go directly to the Camera 2 API from Android. And this is actually not that well covered in the SDK from Meta. So they mostly rely on the webcam texture. But the Camera 2 API, if you want to use this, then you have to make your own plugin, would be the best way. And then you can directly get the feed. But it takes a couple of days, for me at least, to get this working. But I think it's worth to do it. And I hope Meta will also expand their SDK or their samples to using also directly the Camera 2 API, because of course it depends on what you want to achieve, but less delay or less latency is always a good thing.
Yeah, so I think it's the point is we are always driven by this technological prowess, right? So I want to have a real-time control on the feed of the camera, and that is what, let's say, you as someone has been diving and prototyping on this for years is looking for. Okay, now I have something that is completely set up, and I can just start building whatever I want. If we, let's say, instead, I want to start experimenting with this, right? What are some examples of things that you can do that still look or feel good with those 20 milliseconds or more of delay? Can you give us some examples?
A lot of things, like in the end, like color detection or color tracking in the end is a really good example. I also published something on LinkedIn where you have a kind of small animal, a chameleon, that you can change the color of. And I think this is a really cute example because you just can adjust your virtual objects to the environment. And also what I try to experiment right now is try to get the exact noise of the camera and put it on this texture. So in the end that I have the same noise of the camera feed on my virtual objects. I think then it would be even cooler, because actually delay is not important in this point. Also for light estimation, it's not important. So you can make something that looks like it's really in the environment, also through the pass-through camera. Because if you know the pass-through camera, what my biggest complaint about it is that you, in the end, see really well that something is virtual and something is not, because of the light, because of the noise in the camera feed, and everything like this. So I think a good approach would be, I didn't achieve it so far, but a good approach would be that you have something that looks in virtual exactly like through the camera feed. And I think
so basically worsening up the digital content that you see because the camera feed is not that polished or, let's say, clear.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You have to bring all this kind of noise and stuff into your virtual world, and then it looks like it's the same. And that would be really, really amazing, I think.
So we'll discuss more about, in a sense, the building of this experience. But what often people, especially nowadays, think, oh, I have access to the camera. I can see what is around the user. Now I can understand more about it. Now I can connect it to an AI to do stuff, to ask questions. Now, this sounds also something that wouldn't need immediate, right? You can ask a questions, then the refresh, those 20 milliseconds shouldn't be a problem in theory. So in what ways can you connect the camera API to an AI on the backend?
Yeah, I think in the end you can combine it in a very kind of, or let's say it in a different way. I think you can use it everywhere because you in the end have the camera feed, right? So if you want to ask the AI about something, then you can just make an API call with Unity or whatever you're using. And then you ask OpenAI to analyze the picture or to say what you are seeing there right now or to make some classifying or whatever. But I don't know. For me, to be honest, I like these approaches and it's kind of fun. I have to say I already experiment with this kind of stuff since 1 year roundabout or 2 years, how you bring XR and AI together. And I think it's in some way interesting, especially for people maybe who suffer from something. Maybe they cannot see really clear, and then with this kind of AI vision, they see more. I think this kind of approaches are really, really cool. But I didn't found a super good use case, to be honest, for the camera API, where I would say like AI would now help me to understand the world better. Or I did a lot of kind of AI assistants, like 3D avatars who talking with you in mixed reality. And if they understand your world, okay, it's even better. But for me, the camera API, I like it to use it more for computer vision stuff and to understand my room instead of kind of making an API call to OpenAI and ask them to make this world maybe in a cartoon style or whatever. It's also cool, but not my approach, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other point is because with this Ray-Ban coming out and already capable, right, of having this camera feed, at that point, the Quest, I see that it's kind of like middle ground, right? So we have this, there is a camera API, we can add as much digital content as we want, because of course there is no limitation to computational power or maybe like field of view like it is on this potentially coming soon AR glasses. And everybody feels like excited about, but then it feels like that you are not in the way, you're not excited in the same way that would be applied to the AR glasses. It's more still for gaming use cases strictly related with the Quest headset that has, let's say, an entertainment focus. Is that correct?
Yeah, I see way more use cases for glasses like the Ray-Ban Meta stuff, because actually, one use case, just to make an example, for me, I never did this, so feel free to copy my idea and use it for yourself, was to make kind of true crime with this glasses. So if you walk through the streets, then you maybe get the notification, hey, here happened a true crime story. Do you want to listen to this? So for this kind of things, I really think AI is super, super valuable and super, super good. But the Meta glasses, the Meta Quest glasses I'm using, you don't go out with them. So you're using in your own room. I think what would be cool is that your glasses can detect if you are in the kitchen or on the counter, that they really have the kind of, informations that you really need, but you will not walk with them outside of your room. And there's not so much interesting stuff you are curious about in your own room. So the questions you can ask are really limited, I think.
Makes a lot of sense. And actually, you brought up another important thing in the sense that the use cases for the two devices are dramatically different, right? And when we look more at the Quest and something that is used indoor, right? How does the room scanning, the mesh information, and for example, the depth sensing that now got very good. I was actually very impressed to see how these prototypes have been built, where you put an arm that is indeed a moving object in front of digital content, and that is pretty believably, let's say, occlude the digital content. So how are all these things kind of like merging together? How can you help developers, let's say, get a hand and understand all these bits and pieces and put them together?
Actually, I'm not sure. I think, the camera API is something specific and you really have to know why you need it, and kind of this XR glasses, like the Ray-Ban stuff, where you walk around, it's kind of a no-brainer for everything that's around of your world. But I think the Meta Quest is more a device you use at home, right? And so I think also the camera API and what you're doing with this and the mesh and so on. This is really valuable for all the arcade businesses or all the out-of-home entertainments or all the B2B entertainments, because you need to know the environment. So at least it's better than not to know the environment. At home, I think Meta, as I said before, did a really, really great job with what they already delivered. So before Meta released the camera API, I was also kind of wondering, hey, can we do it way better than Meta maybe? And I think for specific use cases, like in our arcade, yeah, we can. Because Meta aiming for private users, they're aiming for normal consumer market and not for arcades. So yeah, there in this space we can achieve more with this. But I think in the end, the normal consumer will have not real advantage of this. And I also think developers who aiming the normal consumer who is sitting at home with one Quest is also not really profiting from this, because, as I said, Meta did a really good job with all their stuff they already implemented.
So you mentioned about your own arcade, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe also because it is arcade that relies on a mixed reality experience that, as we have seen, I'm not sure what's your impression here, but it's still getting its foot on the market, right? So finding successful mixed reality game is not straightforward. I think that still the Quest could say it's a VR first device. And then there are some experiences that have some mixed reality on it, more or less polished, but it's still finding its way. What has been your experience with mixed reality, first experimenting with it and then building it into what is right now an arcade experience that you do with on entertainment center or location-based entertainment?
Yeah, I think not only for entertainment stuff, I think mixed reality in general is the better approach. And I know this because actually I started VR Nerds like 12 years ago or 13 years ago. So since this time, I only do XR stuff. And I talked with a lot of people. And also, I don't know if you know the Lufthansa case with Meta. And it's also mixed reality, because, and also for us, this is a thing, in virtual reality, people feel often disconnected. They feel like they are now in a different world, and that's cool for people who wants to be in a different world. But if you do some business stuff, if you do some showcases, if you do some gaming experience, it feels for many people better to see their real environment, because they don't feel completely disconnected. They don't feel lost. They feel still like a normal human, but with some additional content. And I had the experience, and with, I cannot go here in details, but with many clients I talked that mixed reality is always the better approach than we are. I mean, if you have some special training scenarios, maybe not. But if you do an exhibition or something, think about a person puts on the headset and directly he's in a different world. That's really distracting. So what I try right now, because I'm also doing a lot of freelancing stuff, is if I'm doing or if I develop a VR experience, then I will also add an AR part in the beginning or XR part, that the user sees first his real environment and maybe has an entrance to the VR world, because it makes it way more enjoyable for the people.
Right. So, and I believe you 100% in the sense that I think it's clear how VR is disconnecting, while instead when you are aware about your surrounding and people are also aware that you are seeing them, it creates a different mechanic, right? But would you say that creating for mixed reality experience, is it harder? I mean, what are the challenges, and how maybe developers, designers need to think differently to approach the creation of that mixed reality experience and maybe transitioning that into VR? Like, what are the things that you have seen worked?
Yeah, I think if you are a VR developer, then you can really, really good make also some really impressive AR experiences. So I think if you already know how to do stuff in a spatial room, then it doesn't really matter if it's in a real world or in an artificial world. I think that's fine. I think for many people, it's the problem more to have the transition between the normal screen and the VR or AR world. This is often really difficult because people learned completely different strategies to deal with problems, to deal with UI and UX. But I think in AR, it's kind of similar to the VR stuff in some way. But of course, a thing is that, yeah, in the end, you have to play with the real world. But this is also the thing why I'm so excited about this stuff, because it's not kind of completely a virtual world. It's kind of playing in your world. And then you have to think about different things like where's the door, where's the window, why people have to walk through the room or why not. And there are many things you can do. And I think it's a really creative playground right now. And yeah, I'm excited about this.
One of the challenges that I've heard many developers mentioning is that, of course, you don't have control on the play space, right? In a sense that you don't have, while in VR, everything is, you technically stand, because real room scale experiences in VR now, they tend to be really like standing experience with the teleport around. That's usually what happens. When you're in mixed reality, you need to deal with the physical world. And this means that you might want to have big surfaces when you want to put stuff, empty spaces of a certain size, and so on. Now, what have you seen? How have you dealt with this challenge? Because I suppose that is also different if you're doing it for an indoor, let's say in a bedroom experience or living room experience, with something that instead you are building for your arcade. How do you deal with the user space and bring it into mixed reality effectively?
Yeah. So actually with our game, with Laser Limbo, what I'm doing right now with Nico is that we have different kind of settings for different play spaces. So in the end, like the bullet speed, for example, if you have a large room, then you need a high bullet speed, because actually if it's too slow, then it feels really lame. But even in a closed space, like 1 meter away from each other, then you need really slow bullets, right? And so actually with this kind of mechanics, we can use every size of room. But I have to say, we also aiming for arcade owners or arcade businesses. So I think in a normal kind of living room, you have also to kind of be aware of more things they have in their room, like tables or chairs or whatever. In our game, of course, everything is an obstacle and everything has a collider and you can use it. But yeah, I think you have, in the end, our approach is not the living room, right? And I think this kind of, I don't know the name of this experience right now. There's this one cool experience where you lay on the bed and you can fishing.
I just wanted to have a quick break to remind you that if you're enjoying this conversation, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this one directly in your inbox. And by subscribing, you also get access to a list of tools and apps that allows you to experience conscious plotting in VR on Quest and Vision Pro. Just check the first link in the episode description. And now, let's get back to the show. Yeah, absolutely. It's Pillow. And by the way, I had a chat with Lucas Risotto. Also in the episode, you can find the link in the description. And he was going mad. I mean, that's what he told me, in a sense that literally setting up the bed, because there is another difficulty there, being the experience laying down, that adds another layer of to the experience. And he says that sometimes Meta uploads updates the API or something, and then the whole experience break. So it is... I think that maybe the recommendation here, choose look properly at where you're trying to implement this. If it's something for the living room, for the bedroom, there might be many other considerations that you need to have. If instead it's for a defined space still indoor for arcade, again, then there are different challenges because maybe it's a very big space and then you do need to adjust the bullet speed based on that.
Exactly, and you have so many different challenges. Like for the bedroom stuff, I think like, okay, you have the room and there are really, you look at the ceiling and there are other stuff you have to take care about. In our arcade stuff, for example, we have like 300 square meter or 400 square meter, or if you want, we have 800 square meter. And with 8 players or 10 players at the same time, and so there are completely different kind of problems because, for example, in the room where you are like in a small room, like 10 square meters or whatever, or 20, I don't know, or even more, the tracking is really, really solid. If you try to use the MetaQuest tracking in a room like 200, 300 square meters with 8 headsets, then you can be sure that at least once per hour you have to recalibrate one of the headsets. Even with spatial anchors, even with shared anchors, it will not stay in place. So this is our biggest problem right now.
Indeed. And I think that in this case, you have the multiplayer shared anchor experience where you want that the headset are, let's say, spot on to the user. That is a challenge that people that are usually developing for mixed reality is still developing for a single player experience, usually.
Exactly, and especially in mixed reality, it's really important that, for example, we have these vests. So every player has its own vest, and if the vest is next to you or behind you or in front of you, then it looks not good. So it has to be always sitting really good. And this is kind of a problem with the actually technology, and that's why we're using now the Camera 2 API or the Camera API from Meta to solve these problems. We are not there right now. So I think 90% I have accomplished so far, but I'm not really happy with the solution right now.
And on the other hand, there is another important thing. You see how you go back to kind of like the question that I asked before, right? How do these things merge? In a sense that the shared anchors, for example, and now the camera API can kind of like complement each other to solve what seems like a one problem. In a sense that I want to have the exact location of the user. Maybe I'm using either the depth of the camera API to refine and make sure that that is the actual position of the user. Yeah. This brings me actually to another point because so sometimes we think that recognizing in the camera API is to recognize something that is in our space, right? A desk or maybe our surrounding. But what about moving object? It could be a user, it could be a QR code, it could be a bouncing ball, right? Mm-hmm. What are the challenges with that?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question because actually there are different approaches. Like I actually do a prototype with the ball tracking, and for the ball tracking, in the end, you use the best frame or the next frame you have, and then you try to track it. And this is working really well. I just using in the end some blob tracking, and then because I know the size of the ball, I can calculate how far is it from me away. This is working quite well, especially with the Camera 2 API, because the delay is 20 to 30 milliseconds roundabout. But if you want to track a space like you want to make a room tracking, right, for a space like 300 square meters, like we're doing right now here, then the approach is different because I cannot use the next frame and just compare it with the next stuff that is coming in. I have to use the exact frame that is fitting to the camera. So the problem here is that the webcam texture that is Meta delivering right now, if you're using the normal samples or the API, that you don't have any timestamps. So that means you don't know if this information is 20 milliseconds delayed or 80 milliseconds. So, and this is really crucial for tracking, because actually if I want to rely on maybe 1 or 2 frames in my tracking, because I also want to make it not too much demanding, then I have to be sure that the frames what my camera is kind of using and the frame that my Unity camera is using are exactly the same. And for this, I now built with the Camera 2 API some timecode stuff that in the end syncs Unity with the timecode from the camera. But this is something that is the Meta SDK actually missing. So, and this is really, I hope they will fix it, because actually if you want to have kind of subframe exact tracking, then you really need this kind of stuff. If you just want to track a ball, or you just want to have a card that is kind of moving, then of course 20 to 80 milliseconds are not that problem. But for really exact tracking that is kind of 100 or 2 meters away from you, still exact, then you need it perfect. Exactly. So actually, that's our problem right now, but we are really near to solve it, I think.
So going back a second, right? Because we started talking about tracking object and moving object in space. You mentioned a ball. I think it was a great example because it just shows how this could just work, right? Even though there is some delay. What are the things that can be tracked? Because I'm thinking, for example, a card game that could be a custom card game just designed around this idea. I'm thinking about appliances, right? I'm thinking about figurines or my own screen, for example, right? I could move around and have stuff arranged, attached to this. So what are the things that can be tracked? What are the things that cannot be tracked? And what opportunities do you think these unlock for people creating experiences?
I think the thing is, the question shouldn't be like what can be tracked. I think more like what is efficient to track, because you can track a lot of stuff. You can track 3D objects. You can track images with OpenCV or with AR Foundation. You can do a lot of stuff, but I think the problem is to be talking about a mobile device in the end with the Quest. So we don't talk about a PC that has a webcam and then can make every OpenCV magic. We still have a mobile chip. So I think we should more consider about what is kind of working with the hardware we have. And what I found out with this is kind of marker tracking, for example, is okay. Color tracking is way more simple and way easier to achieve in a high frame rate, because you can also think about the PlayStation approach back in the days. It was exactly the same in the end. They had these colored balls on their Move controllers, and they tracked in the same way. And I think it's kind of an approach that in the end is reliable and also don't use too much performance from your hardware. And for the marker tracking, for example, that's why I try to optimize it so hard. If I would try to just track this marker like every frame, of course, I can just make an kind of calculation that in the end finds the best position in the middle, and then it will be completely exact. But the problem is here that I at least needs 20% of the performance of the Quest. And if you want to deliver a nice game, and then you already use like 20 or 30% just for the camera, this is not so good approach. And that's why I try to optimize it to the maximum, that we in the end can use it without have these disadvantages. You know?
So the point is that there are these pretty significant technical limitation, either in the API, either in the hardware. And there on the other side, there are these, let's say, holy grail experiences, right? Or whatever, the ideal world where everything is track perfect, you can track everything. Maybe the question is, how do you approach creating these prototypes, right? How do you put this creative vision and then you merge it with these constraints that you have?
For me, it's often more or less a thing like I have a great, what means great? I have a game idea, let's say it like this. And then I have it in my mind and I want to achieve this in some way. And for example, with the ball tracking, it is in the end an idea I had like 2 or 3 years ago with the just Unity and OpenCV, and I put a beamer in my room, and I in the end had a balloon environment in my room, then with the beamer, and I used the ball to just hit these balls. And I really like this. And since then, I wanted to translate this into the virtual world or the mixed reality world. And I was really happy that with the camera API, this is now possible. And to be honest, when I first saw the camera API, I was like, okay, now we can do macro tracking and this and that. And I was sitting around in the arcade, and then I had this ball in front of me, and I thought like, hey, back in the days, you had this idea with this ball. You have to try it with these glasses. And then it works really well. And I think like also back in the days with our arcade games, I think you shouldn't think like kind of this is the hardware and I try to make the best out of it. I think you should think more about this is the game idea and this is what I imagined could be, and then you find the best hardware for it. And now the MetaQuest is getting better and better, so we can use it for this, because before there was just no hardware to do something like this. I mean, I used a lot of HoloLens and stuff like this, but in the end, this is not consumer device and you cannot deliver it to anyone.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's exciting to see this. Now there are so many people that can actually try it and play it, right? It really scales and you can iterate much faster. You can try on different kind of user one instead, and it makes sense with the HoloLens. You have shared actually also a lot of advice and tips and in a way to help developers think. Is there anything else that you would like to share based on these first months, so to say, of experience dealing with the camera API? What is the thing that you would say, okay, this is something that you as a developer or a studio, you should really be mindful of and think about when you're building for the camera API?
I think it really heavily depends on what you want to achieve. I think for the most gaming related stuff or the most apps, it's not that big deal. I think more the frosted glass effect would be really nice for many applications, you know, like having the Apple Vision Pro frosted glass effect somewhere.
Really? I mean, I don't know. I think this is like, I've seen people posting stuff about the Apple Vision Pro and it says, oh, now the panels, they have depth. Dude, I mean, it's been 2 years, I don't know how long. And now it's, oh, we really want the frosted glass. I don't know. You're going to forget about it 1 week afterward, I think. I mean, I want things to do. I don't want things to look at. I'm sorry.
That's true. But for example, in our game, it would be just a little nice kind of thing. Like we have these panels, you know, they're in front of you and they don't have this. You know, it's just gray, a little bit transparent. And it's cool, but it would look a little bit nicer with this. It's not a game changer, of course. It's
no, but please go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, but I think like, you know, most of the games will not have an advantage of this new technology. And I think this is also the case for many applications like video players or whatever. I think that's why Meta also didn't release it so far. There's a reason for this. And I think for the normal consumer market, it's not that's super important. But I think for many experimental stuff, it's super important. And what I learned in the last days and weeks or months is that there are a lot of people are really interested in this experimental stuff. And I think there's still a reason, if you are a developer or indie developer especially, to try out this kind of new approaches or these new ways to develop games. Because there are many people who also, on the other side, who are consumers, and they also want to find out, what is the limitation of this device, what I can do with this. And they also, I guess, can spend like €5 for an application that is more experimental. But I wouldn't say that the next kind of major XR title will be using the Camera 2 API.
I believe you. And one thing that we haven't discussed, and I was wondering what's your thought about it. So what about privacy, in a sense that Meta releasing this, do you think that the pass-through camera adds another layer of complexity to the privacy of maybe the users for this environment, or maybe for bystanders, people that might be around? And in the case, for example, of an arcade, that could be more relevant than in your own house indoor. So what are your thoughts? Are there any implications arising with this becoming more accessible?
I think it depends. I think at home, I think it's a more a problem about communication and how the people know what their device are recognizing or whatnot. Because actually, also with your smartphone, if you have a smartphone at home, you have in the end every developer has access to the camera and everything. So if you're using this and pointing in your room, then also somebody could see it. So with the Quest, it's in the end the same. It's an Android device, and in the end, the camera can now be accessed by developers, but they have also an information for you. That means if you're using an app that using the camera feed, then you get a notification that says like, hey, be aware, this is an application that using your environment, your camera, just that you know about it. And I think that's fine because actually with my smartphone, it's the same problem in the end. And I don't see the real difference. Only the thing is that I communicate it different, like people are
To
not
the user,
aware
I
of
agree.
it.
To the user, I agree. But for example, I was in the other day at a library and I was wearing the headset to record some video, do some tests. And then there were people around me that they were acting a bit kind of like strange in a way, right? Not acting strange, but like, what is that guy doing? There is a whole level of uncertainty in a sense, like what is that person doing? Number one, can this person see me? Number two, is this person recording me? Number three, something that with a mobile device, if I was inside a space, would be, let's say, common norm in a sense that they would see me with a phone up making like a video of someone, right? Well, instead with a headset, that leads to a different kind of like, it's new, right? And especially for the people around, that is something new. I could agree on the user side. But from the people around, I'm not sure that would be like it's a bit like having the Ray-Ban having a blinking light saying that you are recording. In a way, similar.
Yeah, this is a really interesting perspective because I actually didn't thought about this. But in the end, it's a new technology, as you said, and I don't think that my grandma knows if I have the headphone, the smartphone like this that I'm filming her. Maybe not. Maybe she knows, but maybe not. And I think the same is with the headsets. I mean, if you wear this kind of headset, you should be aware that somebody is filming you. Even there's no light blinking.
I think it's. I think I'm not sure that things are that straightforward, but I think it's a good point. And honestly, I do think there should be always room for, let's say, experimentation and prototyping. But I think it's also important to ask and raise these questions, and especially in certain situations like outdoor, when people that are not involved in this might be, let's say, somehow part of it. Then I think it's important to discuss and find solutions around it.
That's why I think more the question is, should you use your headset in the public space, because you are responsible for this. If I use my phone and point it at everyone, then I'm the problem. If I use my headset in the public and filming everyone, then I'm the problem.
Good point. Absolutely. So if we take away the excitement, right, and the experimentation, now it's open. What now? So what do you think are we going to see in the upcoming months? If we look maybe from a gaming perspective, it will be something that is not to do with an entertainment side. Maybe it's more on productivity or something that is disconnected from games and playing.
Yeah, what I could imagine is a lot of things like do-it-yourself stuff, like DIY kind of blueprints or whatever. Like you see somebody building something and you're doing the same. Because actually, if I could put my own bike here in the room, and then my AI tool can scan the bike and then give me some help to fix my problems. I think this would be nice. Or also for cooking, like you have your chef in your room and he can help you while you're slicing the vegetables or whatever. I think there are a lot of things you can do, especially with AI in this kind of moment, because just the Quest can understand your environment. And I think this is really, really valuable. For games, I think the biggest thing is kind of understanding the room in a way that it looks like it's real in your room, like it's not like kind of an artificial prop in your room. And also to understand where are you in the room. Because for me, at least it makes a difference if I'm in the bathroom or I'm in the living room or I'm in the corridor or whatever. I think the experience can adjust to this, because then it gives me also a way more feeling that this is real.
I would, and now I'm bringing up a game scenario, but I just see like board games or card games being something that could be greatly enhanced by this. Because, I mean, one nice aspect of those is the tactile aspect, right? The fact that you have cards or dice or boards, and having the ability to merge that content, it's great. I think there are already some good use cases for completely virtual, like let's think about Demio and maybe other games that are this tabletop experience. But I see that also bringing those with a physical element could really, let's say, add on top of it. But again, I'm gaming on site, but I think your DIY point, it's very fair. I think that would be great help.
Yeah. And also, in the end, it can cause fraud in the gambling area because actually, the smart devices are maybe smarter than yourself, and then it can help you to win the game.
Let's hope. I mean, humans are humans. That is going to happen for sure.
Yeah.
But let's end on a positive note. Christoph, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just if you are in Berlin, then visit us in our arcade. We are here in Trapdoor Park Center, and we're showing here Laser Limbo exclusively. And come around and play the game. It is really fun.
Awesome. Christoph, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.